While doing all this, the Pharos opened in my mind to show me the true state of the segmentum, and even beyond that in the eastern fringe. Hive Fleet Scarabus was approaching human worlds, after devouring a couple Xenos and Orc planets. I could cut them off from those supplies of biomass with a dozen exterminatus torpedoes, and the same for the two smaller Tyrannid fleets approaching my own domain. The biocruisers will need to be met in the void, and destroyed in detail before they could land. Otherwise, Rose was busy inside a Death Watch fortress called I_of_Damocles, coordinating a large-scale intelligence operation against the Tau, plus naturally assassinations of ethereal leaders, and torturing captured prisoners. Janice was working hard beside her, using her psychic powers with lots of skill. "Father, is this you?" she mused softly, while 100 scalpels were dancing around in midair and flaying some ethereal guy, alive. "Yes, sweetie. So you're an Inquisitor's acolyte now?" I asked in faint amusement. "Have to. Damn greater good blueberries are very resistant to normal Inquisition practices. So I help Mommy sometimes. I also navigate that Black Inquisition battlecruiser docked outside," Janice explained while poking the damn brainwashing tower and reading his mind while his attention was diverted by the possibly debilitating pain of losing bits of skin. Well, that was a good career choice, at least. Very few if any people would dare question a navigator working for the Inquisition's own black ships. "Any boy you like?" I continued in a teasing tone, more amused. "Dad, I'm working here," my daughter protested in my mind, so left her get on with her helping. She will probably need to find a nice navigator boy without too many mutations, by accident or by kidnapping. So I turned to my dear Rose, who was overseeing a large command center filled with a company of black armored Astartes, plus hundreds of autosavants, sages and lex mechanics. Streams of data engrams and machine liturgies covered the holofields, some of them compiling a stack archive on the human worlds in the Farsight Enclave. A picked capture of the talisman _of_Arthas_Moloch while worn by Primarch Guilliman was posted on the main screen, with sigils and runes shifting constantly. Well, they would want to know how the Primarch has recovered from his warp poison injury. And while the hexagrammatic talisman was well disguised as an imperial relic, the Inquisition had real experts too. And they were suspicious. The vectors for a dozen small orc wars were shifting slowly on other side screens, while the top 3 screens were keeping watch over 3 Tyrannid's tendril fleets, all heading towards the Necron world of Sarlocc. Well, they had things covered quite well, from what I saw. No real-time data, of course, but then humanity did not have another Pharos, unless that Shariak's artifact on Occludus was something of the same nature. Not that the Death_Spectres chapter were sharing what they knew with anyone else, anyway. Keeping watch in secret, and probably intercepting any moves from those mysterious Xenos in the Pale Stars. And also killing their brothers a few times, as a graduation ceremony, for some obscure reason. "Hey Rose. I see you noticed my gift to our beloved Primarch. Keeps the poison at bay, right?" I asked in a level tone. "My strange lover is back. I expect you have already met with Calixa?" The Inquisitor asked in my mind, without showing any outward sign of emotion. Perhaps she was upset to learn it was me who woke up Guilliman? "Met the cute Infocyte, yes. Should I do more with her?" I wondered in a teasing voice. "I would anyway, but better to have permission." "You do what you want, horny lover. Just, remember Calixa is not yours nor mine. Grandmaster Fadix holds her leash, including her kill switch. So I heard about the Moloch Crusade. Doesn't seem so bad as it first appeared, less than 50 worlds were lost. And nothing important anyway." My Rose commented in a right tone. "Those devoured worlds still held billions of people, but indeed, I saved the Hive worlds and the Forges, making the losses seem irrelevant in the grand scheme. Hive Fleet Scarabus will hit Koronis in a few years. I'll burn their landed elements, and vortex the Norn Queen. Nothing else I can do from Sutha. Anyway, I'm nearly ready compiling the cruiser-size warpless engines, so I'll need something to trade for another batch of old ships to appear all over with partial STC templates. We might see a strong opposition from the navigators, this time," I said in slight worry. The crazy navigators were willing and able to sabotage the Dark_Glass device, almost dooming the Imperium of Man back in the days of the Horus Heresy. They would dare again, no doubt. The Navigator houses already make overtures to proclaim the Warplus engines as heretic inventions, and have them all destroyed. Of course, both Primarchs disagree violently, and a couple of Patanova family heads were removed already. Master Fadix doesn't tolerate dissenters, the Inquisitor explained in a somber tone. Well, the internal conflicts in the Imperium have begun then, and they'll only get worse. However, that was why I gave both Primarchs null rods. Even Patanova-level navigators won't be able to scry them now. Nor would Chaos Sorcerers and Psyker Inquisitors, nor even Eldar Farseers or Avatars. They'll have to tread carefully, not knowing where or when a Primarch might appear and ruin someone's day, or remove a few heads. I changed focus on the Trazyn the Infinite, finding him fiddling with Jokero weapons and artifacts, and even a dozen of live Jokero orangutans kept in a green field cage. New toys, Lord Trazyn? I asked in faint amusement. Asked the puppy stranger. Your null-bone staff is ready, but I still need a blood flaw genome if you want it to work for a Psyker. As for those Titans, I changed my mind. Not giving them back. You can take the captured knights, and that's it. The crazy Necron overlord proclaimed in an irate voice. I sighed inward. Even Necrons kept the amazing Titans from my grasp, for now. But 34 knights would be useful too. I even had pilots for them, Justine's and Lord Whitelance's children. Only a couple were blanks, but I'll use what I had. As for Titans, I had another plan. Show me the cruiser engine and reactor first. We'll discuss the Titans later, Lord Trazyn, I demanded more sternly, and grabbed the data slate in midair. A quick check showed me exactly what I wanted. And then there were the other human technologies recovered and upgraded by Trazyn. There was even an upgraded Lance battery in there, with better fire rate and range, and an even longer range Nova cannon. A host of other schematics, from Hellguns to Vortex missiles and stasis_bombs and grenades, neutron and graviton guns, conversion beamers and Volkite weapons of a dozen sizes. And then, there were some kind of walking turrets, slightly taller than a modern dreadnought, and a bit rounded. Like my armed sentinels, but way more advanced. Checking the schematic rapidly, I discovered they were in fact also dreadnoughts, meant to preserve wounded Astartes and keep them fighting. This Deridio_pattern_dreadnought would make an excellent platform for mobile tarantula turrets. Of course, nothing as complicated as the original design, but I was getting good at simplifying machines. Another Walker template was a Leviathan_dreadnought armed with a gigantic Cyclonic_melter_lance and a Grav_flux_bombard. These were very large machines, the size of the largest Imperial Knights and even more powerful. I shall see to it that blank Astartes got to pilot these Leviathans, and stand strong in the face of greater demons or orc bosses of same size. Plus the arms could be made to end in power fists, and thus able to hold gigantic melee weapons like Reason had his power glaive. Then tanks and troop transports in 100 configurations, and lastly a simple, rugged and better lasgun for the infantry. Pretty much a hotshot gun, but firing fast and without overheating. I wasn't able to create something this simple and potent even after decades of constant attempts, and yet this Necron took only a few years to overhaul hundreds of Mechonicus designs and make them all better. Damn cheater. I trust my efforts are appreciated, stranger. I had to coerce 1 billion of my slaves to work on the pathetic weapons of humanity and repair what flaws they could. Luckily I had 1,000 tech priests to extract memories from. They seem a bit drained now, but I can give them back if you wish. Trazyn explained in a proud tone. He didn't even work personally for this? Well, slave and serf labor was the norm in the galaxy, from the Imperium to the Orcs and the myriad of slavers and enslavers. It's decent work, I admit. Here, a database of Tau technology now. Perhaps we can obtain even smaller ship engines and better force fields. I replied while keeping calm and depositing the valuable data stack on his work coffin. Then I retrieved a lock of hair from Mambli's son Aeneas and sent it over as well. Gene samples for the bloodline flaw in the staff. Perhaps those Jokeros can craft more null rods? Trazyn waved a hand at the air, and produced a small wand as proof. Their null wands are even better than those contraptions of the Mechonicus. Wider range, and no disruptions from warp storms. They even upgraded my own empathic staff. I sighed in defeat. Of course, the orange orangutans were idiot savants, and also made the fabled digital weapons prized anywhere in the galaxy, by everyone. I took out another data slate with my own STC templates, most importantly those which didn't work yet, and sent it over as well. Another batch of less advanced machines, most of them created at Forge World Retribution, to be used to develop the Fringe. They need to remain at micron level of quality, because there are no better forges out there. That wasn't entirely true, but better appear weaker and harmless. Savages. How can they even entangle Quant? Never mind. These are simple designs indeed. Electric trains. Only these personal shields have a small value. Flawed and inefficient, but at least some of those silly tech priests tried. There might be a small hope for humans, after all. The Necron tech wizard uttered in slight disgust. And those conversion shields were my best work. When I returned to my room, I remembered to unfreeze the Death Watch guys protecting the teleportarium on the Ejida fortress, and even gave them several Archaea weapons from my personal inventory. Vortex grenades and Inferno pistols might serve them well when sent on a kill team to hunt down a powerful orc boss or something. Meanwhile, Dreadnought Chiron remained in stasis, till he was needed. No need to stress him too much, after he saw me burn a Tyrannid hive fleet and kill a queen without lifting a finger. He would be my second in command, thus he had the need to know. Plus a null wand would cover other problems of a more chaotic nature. Same for Brother Semnai, most likely. If they couldn't be blanks, they could at least have the same protection via artificial means. Then, I brought Calixa in the room while I entered my shower to refresh, at the same time with Canis. We got teleported. Wait. I'm missing 6 hours on my data log. Your master is so tricky, right, Space Wolf? The blonde woman asked Canis in a curious voice. Grr. Woof. The Space Wolf replied in outrage, and went to pour himself meat pellets and water. He was still growing, and had to squeeze a little, to fit through the doorframe meant for Terminator armors. I was ambivalent on this. A bigger wolf would be stronger, but he might reach Van size soon. And then he will eat even more. A minute later, the blonde woman joined me in the shower, to help me wash my back. With her chest, but I didn't mind. I thought Astartes were more transhuman. She sent with a data transmission, while examining my body all over. But I'm not a real Astartes. All my organs are natural. I explained with a mind transmission, which would not be logged on her mind implant. The sounding board was very useful for tricks like this, and invisible inside the Tesseract. I just had to wear one Tesseract around my neck, like a relic talisman depicting a skull with angel wings. Made sense to have one Tesseract always nearby, even when outside my armor with the magic glove. For example, when naked or inside the night. Natural organs, you say, my lord? I guess I shall test this claim, very profoundly. The Infocyte continued with a data entry, getting busy with testing my claim. Much later, she rested on my chest and sighed in content. All natural. I wasn't tired at all, so I called Janet and Rayla to my room, and helped me relieve all my stress. Ludvius, see that Lady Calixa gets a room with a cogitator bank and a pair of tech priests to watch over her. Biologist and cogitatrix Clades. My bodyguard just nodded and opened the armored door to let Calixa walk out, with a simple bathrobe covering her. Well, I wasn't so tight on uniform regulation, especially for women. Robes made for easy access and good thermal protection, and that was sufficient. A minute later, Janet arrived with Regina, while Rayla came hand in hand with Henna, as they were probably discussing complicated topics like raising children or blowing up Xenos from orbit. I checked inward to see if my energy stores would suffice, and my body promptly signaled that yes, 4 women will be just enough. General, you have the rank so you may go first, Regina joked as she leaned over to kiss me and measure my body with hungry eyes. We will soon start teaching you combined arms warfare, especially with air power and orbital drops. I explained in a gentle voice as Rayla dropped herself on top of me, and began enjoying the benefits of a young body once again. Hopefully Amberley will remember to requisition those Katakan regiments and bring them to Alivar once the Moloch Crusade was over. I plan to obtain as many of those jungle expert regiments as possible, and the Katakans had raised over 1,000 of them, mainly infantry. And since infantry regiments had the largest numbers, that was excellent too. armed and trained colonists for the fringe, while women will be provided by saving hive worlds and exacting a toll. All normal and natural in this galaxy. For the next generations, blank men from my blank town will start being sent as minor nobles in the colonies, and do their best to spread their genes to the Katakan descendants. As for my daughters and granddaughters, well, I could marry them off into rogue trader families, or something of that nature. They will still command their spaceships, and spread blank genes among other houses, which will become important later. Alliances among nobles' houses were common enough, but my house will have a palace on Terra itself. I might have to beat off eager men with a stick. They already knifed each other among the Katakans, but the Katakans were not rich and important and well-connected like rogue traders were. That could wait though, until Decima and Serena advised me on it. Perhaps even those sisters from Orders Famulus. I had a dozen of them among my concubines, without even asking them for it. They just somehow appeared in my bed, escorted by Helena and Catherine. Several hours later, Henna took the last spot with a calm and patient demeanor, eager for another child. I was so lucky with this cousin, as she was everything other women were not, at least not here. Loving, accepting, soft and warm, a dutiful wife and mother. However, while I did love her for it, those were not good survival traits, not in this hellish galaxy. Maybe in 10,000 years, if my efforts bore fruit. Tomorrow morning at 8:00 ship time. All of you report on the cadet deck, for strategic courses. Henna, you befriend Calixa and see about medical tests, I commanded after we concluded the marital duty. Yes sir. Rayla answered in a military tone, and leaned over to steal a kiss before she ran off. Teenager hormones. She'll get over it. Regina mused to herself, glancing after Rayla as she departed the room. Regina did not receive the chrono treatment as she wasn't in need for a young body yet, nor was Janet. I caught her chin and kissed her abruptly. Go and rest, my dear. I have other work now. I growled in a harsher tone. She smiled and walked away swaying her hips, confident in her charms and position. I almost called her back for another round, but that was what Regina wanted, and we couldn't have that. See you tomorrow, my lord, Janet whispered in a shy voice, and ran after her boss. You bet your perky ass we will see you tomorrow. And for the rest of your life. These 3 women will form my command staff in the future, and follow me on campaigns. We will see a lot of each other, and enjoy it too. But perhaps not Calixa, if she was not loyal to me, like Rose had warned me. A double agent if I ever saw one. Triple agent, considering the Inquisition too. I will have to handle her with caution then. At my order, Felicia arrived in a minute and sat in my lap, while I powered up the cogitator to start working on the new machines. The blonde engineer almost forgot to pump her hips, while watching the trove of treasures on the screen. This is amazing, my lord. So many discoveries, Felicia exclaimed and squeezed me in excitement. There is even more, from what I could recover from the STC caches Prelia and Jolliffe and these teleporting orcs right here. Some templates even seem intact. But first, we work on the walking turrets. I want one multi-laser and one las cannon, powered by this small plasma reactor, and we'll cover them in blackstone. Maybe even a flare shield, if you're good enough. I teased her and squeezed her breasts in my palms. Keep pumping, my lord. These babies will burn through Xenos like the Omnissiahs will, Felicia demanded loudly as her mind impulse unit delved deeper into the cogitator array, mixing and matching parts, balancing targeting codes and draining me of gene seed in a strange but pleasantly competent display of multitasking. I was very happy for her assistance, and offered Felicia a sip from the expensive apple peach juice from Planet Ajax. She sipped greedily through the straw and kept working hard. I knew she loved it, as her flesh was weak for pleasure. But I would provide all the pleasure she wanted, in exchange for valuable service. My body, good food and drinks, gifts and treats and even children, one day. My work was progressing a few times faster with her aid, and I got prime service too. What was not to like? By the next week, most of my goals for this trip were achieved, including the obliteration of the largest orc worlds in the Jagatyrant Empire, a dozen more Xeno worlds burned to the bedrock to eliminate potential new traits for the Tyranids, and a couple hood worlds that would surely be huge problems once they began migrating towards the Imperium. While this might seem a pity, burning livable planets. Truth was there were at least 10 times more planets out there than those known on the official Imperial maps, and 1,000 times more not livable yet, but those could be made useful with effort and time. The galaxy was teeming with potential, but using warp drives and exploring blindly wasn't really working. The Tau had the right idea, simply expanding their volume geometrically, slowly exploring and conquering every star system in their reach. Or at least they were, until their alien allies started getting burned, and their own cities invaded by demons. What the Pharos showed me was entrenchment, orbital forts and star bases being built to defend the inner lines, exploring ships recalled for defense, and Orc was getting brutally massacred with ranged fire like in the war of Daka. Of course, this time the crude war spheres did not survive, with plasma torpedoes teleported inside their engine rooms and bridges, while hundreds of Orcs found themselves teleported on board the ancient vessels and doing what they did best, grabbing anything shiny and shooting with it. And given that the shiny weapons they found were Necron and Dark Eldar in origin, they had a substantial advantage over the crude. Eventually the Tau would win, as they too of you had cheat codes and technology and organization, plus a starfaring civilization still unbroken by the horrors of the 41st millennium. Not yet, not while they were useful. But later, the sky will open and rain fire on the heretics. Now there was a god, and it hated them. Perhaps it was me, but I felt the urge to just crush most inquisitors I found, even those with exemplar conduct. Sadly, they were actually needed, acting like white cells inside a sick organism. Sure, most of them used axes and hot irons to cut away and burn the infections, often without much care of burning innocents in their zeal. A few of those that I caught in the act, just ordering exterminatus on planets on mere suspicion of hiding a cult, those I introduced to a cracked grenade on their necks, leaving their acolytes to carry on a proper investigation. Their power armor will just need doused with a stream of water to wash off the brains and blood, and it would still be good as new. The cult's leaders were also blown up, leaving a trail of smoke and fire for a smart acolyte to raise above and become an inquisitor himself. As for Trazyn, we arranged for another space hulk to be broken up into useful bits, this time the famous Olithros. The ships themselves would be emptied of cultists and genestealers, and their engine cogitators would be filled with the new STC patterns, including the cruiser-sized Warplus engine. 100 Navy and Mechanicus ships were casually dropped in Forge World systems, from Antax to Griffon 4, or from Canto 2 to Carnia. As a gift for my Rose, the Norn's Ghost Inquisitorial battlecruiser arrived near her Eye of Damocles fortress, while the Dark Angels battle barge called Caliban's will arrived in front of their wandering asteroid fortress, the Rock. Sure, the void ships were beaten up and would need lots of work to be recommissioned, but that wasn't the point. The stores of STC templates were a wealth of knowledge that should push the strength of humanity a few thousand years ahead. Forge Retribution received another damaged Apocalypse-class battleship, because I was playing favorites. And if there were 34 knight suits on board that ship, plus enough Mechanicus weapons to arm a Skitarii legion, it must have been Emperor's will. Maybe the Omnissiah? It sure seemed that way. As for Forge World Lentral_Prime, which wasn't blown up by the Necron World engine this time, they received an entire Arc Mechanicus, just to spit in fate's face. I made my own fate. Damn hellish universe. Of course, I couldn't stop every tragedy and massacre, either being in the wrong place, or lacking the means. But I could prepare for example for Armageddon, simply by having Lord Trazyn drop the asteroid core of the Olithros on a collision course with Planet Turk. A mere cosmic accident, as it happens so often to human worlds. Why not to Orcs, right? While the range of the Pharos was small, and I couldn't burn the place with exterminatus, an asteroid crashing onto a planet would still burn most life away, just like the dinosaurs of Terra found out. The Orc boss Ghazghkull might survive this, because he also had gods on his side, but the crazy mushroom wouldn't have that Orc army to start with anymore. The sad truth was that warp godlings were able to direct space hulks as transport ships and infection vectors for tyrannid genestealers or various Orc and Chaos forces, or create warp storms to abduct entire star systems or Astartes chapters. I was simply returning the favor, using advanced technology in place of mighty psycho powers. Sadly, the currency of this great game were lives, and often human lives. I had no doubt the Emperor was playing the game as well, possibly in a loose alliance with the Eldar gods. As for the Tau, it was increasingly clear that their leading caste, the Ethereals, were a strange breed of navigators, using their empathic powers instead of psycho powers. Not being warp-based, or possibly only tangentially like the normal blanks were. But because they were rather close in galactic terms, I needed the Tau contained, before they began the third, fourth and fifth expansion spheres, which would make them a match for the Ultima Segmentum. Their allies were instead free game, and Trizin was glad for a challenge. My warriors would enjoy the challenge indeed, if what you say it's true. Can't have someone else join our party and collect species and individuals with mind control. I shall direct a dozen of my lords to raid and harass those allies, while using incremental weaponry like you wish. But I will need more of those Dark Eldar void minds, to conduct political maneuvers. Yes, that's the correct term. Only my own dynasty is worthy to lead the Necrons. Easily accomplished, as the void mines were smaller than a torpedo. I provided 36 of those dark light weapons, which will soon be transformed into 36 Necron dynasties left without a leader. We did have plenty of common enemies, Trizin and I. Alright, Lord Trizin, now I shall tell you another story. In the final days of the Horus Heresy, the battle of Druth 2 took place on a massive scale, among Titan legions from both sides. And here on Druth 2 is where the famous Psi Titans of the Ordo Sinister were deployed. One of these rare Titans, the Occidentalis Shirian, was tragically lost on this Ultramar world, and as a final revenge, a loyal Titan Princeps targeted the space elevator and brought it down, killing almost everyone and pulverizing the great machines of humanity. But, someone with great skill and patience might be able to pinpoint the exact place and time to interfere. A damaged Psi Titan, and a mostly intact Warlord Titan vanishing right as the orbital structure falls onto the battling armies below. Just imagine the value of those treasures. Plus, nobody would even know they were not destroyed, I whispered in his robotic mind, while leaning heavily on my bone staff. And for this lesson, you want what in trade? All those Titans I so painfully worked to capture from Forge Venatoria? The Necron Overlord asked in a suspicious voice. You have made clear you want a collection of Titans. Fine. So you can keep those you already have. But that Psi Titan is armed with a powerful pariah weapon, the Dread Sinistra Manus Tenebrae. The pilot is also a blank of tremendous power, and only that pariah Princeps can fire the weapon. Now imagine that weapon, repaired and magnified, combined with the Blackstone Fortress. It might even work on the Hadex anomaly, I suggested in a teasing voice. Perhaps. It would take me years to pinpoint the exact timeline, and extract the weapon undetected. The human emperor is still active at that time, and he scares me. It would be very risky for me even if working through a disposable remote, and the gains would be worth it, as I do have these orange monkeys to repair and upgrade the Tenebrae device. And in return? Trizin asked in an aggravated voice. I want that other Titan, including the crew. And a mind control device based on the enslaver bones. Something very subtle and undetectable by psychers. Plus the STC schematic for a better Titan, although I assume you already have those, I demanded in a eager tone. I wasn't asking much, and the Necron knew it. It is a small claim indeed, if the extraction is successful. Surely you need something else? Trizin the Infinite wondered, sensing something was amiss. I pretended to think it over. I could use a dozen small-scale tesseracts, for my agents. 1,000 cubic kilometers of inner volume would be enough. Perhaps also allowing short-range teleports. Don't want to give these agents too many powers, you surely understand. I think the Necron chuckled in amusement, while checking his stores for something on that low scale. I do have a couple of these trinkets, we call them a Nexus_arrangement. However, a dozen of them would be too much. 2 of them, one paid in advance for your helpful information, the other when I recover that Psi Titan. And your nullbone staff is ready too, although the floor is very small. Perhaps the infant human needs to grow stronger and widen the floor, before more psycho powers can be used. Well, that made sense, I guess. Aeneas would only have the blank traits manifested, like all the blanks. But as he reached puberty, the psycho genes will activate just like they did for Janus. I could wait a decade, no problem. As for other trades, I would need more valuable information or artifacts. Back to lore digging, when I returned to my chapter. Checking with the Pharos one last time, I located a fleet of Ravager's Chaos vessels in orbit above the Tower World Salamine. With some carefully placed melter bombs inside the engine rooms, their ships were immobilized and prevented from retreat, giving the tower a worthy enemy to fight. Why not let the tower enjoy the wonders of the galaxy, and test their tactics on Chaos Space Marines? After this, it was time to leave Sutha, before another less friendly Inquisitor showed up. I couldn't count on my luck to meet another Ordo Xenos beauty. Were they hired as ambassadors for the human race? Not that I would mind another pretty Inquisitor, even with the host of problems and demands they brought along. And lastly, it was time to finish the deal with the pretty blonde Infocyte, setting her on a long quest of my own. Well, after thoroughly pumping Calixa full of endorphins and gene seed, naturally, she stretched on my bed like a cat, and licked a finger teasingly, which made me almost keep her in my retinue, just for fun. But her talents would be wasted like that. Dear Calixa, focus on your mission. I chided her sharply with a mind transmission, which broke her reverie. Of course, my lord. Another mission beside birthing you a child, you mean? The blonde minx asked while patting her belly. It wasn't visible, but my navigator confirmed a blank fetus was growing inside. We will meet again, and you'll have many more children, my dear. I will keep the blanks, and you will train the rest of our children. As for your mission, you will have to travel and compile a list of allies for our house. Rogue traders and rich governor houses, on imperial worlds that have shipyards and weapons factories. This data stack contains 1,000 STC patterns, which would be tremendously valuable to any of our allies. As for your escort, you will have this space wolf puppy called Trajan, Silent Sister Hestia and 5 Death Watch Astartes from Rose's retinue, and battalion of Katakans for aggressive negotiations. For more diplomatic matters, you will have Sister Helena and a couple of Order Famulus sisters to conduct genetic testing. I explained in a gentler voice, while Canis licked his puppy with a sad face. Sorry buddy, we'll make sacrifices. I will have to temporarily detach one of my cute nurses and her 2 friendly family advisors, and Hestia was rather a formidable warrior in her own right. Just in case some chaos cult tried to impede my plans. I even detached Slimarbo to aid Calixa in her difficult mission, along with 3,000 Katakans, 1,000 of them women. Couldn't let the big bad monster rest over the next decade, when he could pump babies during travel, and then strangle or vanish impolite reluctant allies who didn't know yet who their boss was. And that pocket tesseract would be very useful for his task. Perfect place to store dead bodies too. Calixa skimmed the data stack with wide eyes, no doubt realizing exactly how valuable the information inside was. So, I'm to wait here until your daughter Andrea arrives with a Mars battlecruiser, and then proceed to Car_Danyash to install Makar's pattern warpless drives on the ship. After that, I have free rein on my travels, though not too far from the Ultima Segmentum. She mused while reading the mission's parameters. It's why it is called an independent command, Calixa. Andrea also has 50 billion thrones in her vault, and some other gifts. Our Lance Firehouse is not poor, as you well know. The vigil for the vanquished was gifted to us by a Primarch, right? I reminded her in a right tone, and if I misbehave, those Astartes have orders to hunt me down. I see. The Infocyte deduced with perfect logic. You will not misbehave, my dear. We have the same goals, and the same enemies. We just use different means, and Grandmaster Fadix and I will be colleagues on Terra soon enough. As secondary goals, you will locate cultists and corrupt officials, and keep watch for inquisitors that are themselves corrupt or helping cultists. Those you will report to Captain Andrea, and she will decide their fate. You will not act yourself, is that clear? I demanded while twisting her nipples in warning. I understand, my lord. Your daughter is a blank herself and thus not suspect of corruption. Calixa muttered in a weird voice, as if enjoying the pain. Very possible, considering what they must have put her through to become a member of the Vonu's temple. Exactly. And the very reason blanks were hunted out from Terra, including the Silent Sisters. Can't have people immune to chaos, right? I asked in a rhetoric question. The blonde Infocyte nodded while meditating on my words. It does seem stupid in hindsight. So that's why. Soon after, my battleship and the carriers departed for home, while Calixa and her new small army awaited for Andrea to arrive. A week later I received a hero's welcome on Elivar, while our troops and crew on the Crusade fleet were regarded as invincible heroes against the Xenos' terror. Our losses were indeed minuscule, and mostly only machines and equipment. And so I continued my long task, staying on Elivar this time, to oversee the progress of the Lamenters, and returning the Lost Brothers to our chapter. Veteran Semnai still wasn't too happy with me, but there was nothing he could do but lament to himself and keep his duty, training the new generation. Chiron took over most of the tactical training, because millennia of practical experience counted a lot. After 2 years of hard work and constant exploration and expansion, we had to halt, because the volume was becoming too large and difficult to patrol. 500 habitable worlds and 10 times as many star systems used as naval bases and mining outposts will suffice, until we had a large enough population. A couple of arid orc-infested worlds were kept as training ground for our regiments, as well as live testing area for the new weapons and machines being produced by Forge Retribution. Meanwhile, Elixir kept expanding the obsidian auguries like I had hoped, and taught the future tech marines the tricks of an infocyte. Their implantation with gene seeds was not as easy as with the blank recruits of the Lamenters, but we did have high-quality stock from the Red Scorpions and Primarch Khan himself, plus gene seeds extracted from Mantis warriors, executioners, and blood angels. Plenty of aspirants still died, even with all my efforts to prepare them. Company after company, the tech marine candidates were either sent to friendly Forge worlds to be trained, or trained at home by the tech priests of our own. And as it happened, those candidates sailed on discovered ships, cruisers and destroyers captured during the Badab War, but their hangars and troop decks filled with blackstone and other valuable ore. The ships will return upgraded and filled with more Katakan regiments, to serve as colonists for my new kingdom in the fringe. On Forge Retribution, my half-brothers and sisters were learning how to pilot their knights, under Lord Whitelance's supervision. Everything seemed to work fine, and I was getting worried it was something too good for this hell. And only a month after, a huge orc war arrived at my doorstep, with crazy orcs throwing asteroids at my defenses and capital, while to the side, a gathering of 10 Chaos chapters waited for the way to be cleared. It would have worked no doubt, despite my efforts to provide as many orbital forts and defense ships as humanly possible. There were other gods, and they hated me. You should gather your family and retreat, evacuating as many civilians as possible. Dreadnought Chiron advised me in a calm voice. Things look so bad, huh? I mused out loud, while scratching Canis on his head. The space wolf snorted in dismissal and went to look for another imported she-wolf to subdue. He wasn't that interested in my games it seemed. Sadly, those bitches were all one-time partners for Canis, as they rarely survived being mounted by a van-sized wolf. Even if they did, and carried a few puppies to term, they were rather, let's say, too broken for further use. Right, the big orc war. I almost forgot, and they're gone. A minute later, the Chaos ships also vanished, but only to reappear into the sun, with plasma warheads detonating inside their engine rooms, to keep them from escaping. The void was almost clear, and I was not even paying much attention as the last Chaos battleship started melting deep inside the sun, when the starfleet shuddered and trembled like something huge hit us. Gela Generatorium's overloading. Breach on Wing 8. The console Lex Mechanic announced in almost panic. Containment protocol. And let's go and receive the visitors, I proclaimed while priming reason for combat. In a minute, I climbed inside the cockpit and urged the knight at full speed, rushing towards the breach. In the Tesseract I could faintly see the invader, some kind of big demon slashing about our garden and the precious hydroponics. Damn it. Those had costed me 1 billion thrones to import from all over, since combat drugs and rare medication were hard to find and had to be produced by Astartes apothecaries. Who knew? Brother Semnai ran even faster than my knight and managed to slash off a wing from this demon, with the chronoglaive I gave him, before getting slapped aside, his Terminator armor tumbling like a 2-ton leaf. Semnai vanished in my labyrinth before he could dent my deck, and probably get a concussion. Or give the deck a concussion, for that matter. I am Mka, the big demon began shouting as his head vanished under a blast from my volcano lance. The demon didn't die, instead starting to regrow its lost head and wing, when the Silent Sisters arrived in force and began chopping at his body with ease, while my power glaive held the demon's own sword locked. I kinda wished to give the thing a true death, but I didn't have a force weapon, nor the psycho powers to use one. And the only other such weapon, usable by a blank, was the true name of a demon. Well, luckily for me, I did know of this Mkar. And the Silent Sisters were quite a force multiplier too. You are Malak Kato. Merely a word-bearer traitor, unable to keep your oath. I sentence you to die a true death, your soul erased forever. I boomed from my cockpit, just as Sister Letitia jumped and slashed the arm holding the black demon sword. With my power glaive free, I could cut and slash the corrupted marine transformed into a winged demon into tiny bits, and portion each cut to my Silent Sisters, to be exorcised. A flint dagger was all that remained from the banished demon, which I collected for myself. This must be one of those rare Thom, an Inter-X relic able to cut through space itself. It will take me some time to learn its use, but from what I knew, they could turn an enemy to your side. Then I remembered to bring back Brother Simnai, and proceeded directing the tech priests and servitors to seal the fort's breach and burn the poor plants. It wasn't like we would use frozen and corrupted plants for anything. We will need even more blackstone armor and Geller fields. Damn demons. Isn't Ka truly dead, Master Lancefire? The veteran brother asked as the last vestiges of the demon's body were burning under the pariah boots of my sisters. Probably so. Using a human vessel makes it very easy to kill the stupid demons. Shout their name, and cut them down. And having Silent Sisters around helps too. I explained patiently while driving Reason back to its hangar. It seems too easy. The man muttered in distrust. Knowledge is a great power, brother. Guard it well, I said wryly as the cockpit opened and I patted Reason on its armored head. A minute later, Engine Seer Felicia arrived running at full tilt, passing me without a word and going over the scrathes of the night with cooing sounds like calming a baby. Incense and oil as well as prayers and machine canticles covered the poor night suit, and its mechanical head stared at me in a pleading gaze. Make her leave. Sorry, dead brother. Just endure, like we all did. Plus you did fight a demon prince, so holy oils and techno-lingua prayers should help. Or at least, do no harm. As I returned to the command center, I was already exploring what these orcs have brought me, besides the space hulk still far beyond the gas giant. Nearly 80 cruisers, 6 orc battleships and 250 escorts, of which 50 ships were Chaos destroyers still bearing the marks of a couple Chaos warbands. This was possibly the payment the traitors used to attract the orcs, not that it actually took much to convince them into attacking anyone. Done it myself a few times. But this indeed gave me a great idea, if only I could find an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor to get on board with my plan. And while my ships formed into a strike group to dismember that space hulk, I concluded my work and ejected those infested Chaos destroyers into the sun. Good riddance. I now had even more precious metal to construct my army and armor up my ships. The battle cruisers and battle barges first, because they had the huge reactors meant for battleships, and thus more than enough energy to move, even after tripling their armor. And once all these orc cruisers were cleaned up and repaired, I would have 100 capital ships to form the core of my personal fleet, backed up by 10 battleships and several carriers. And everything would be able to travel outside the warp too. The logistics would get a bit complicated, but while I had the cruisers towed to friendly forged worlds, then upgraded, the next generation of granddaughters will be almost ready to become captains. The decision thus made, I nodded to myself while Chiron just mumbled something. You said something, Chiron? I asked to make sure. I said you're breaking all the rules, Lord Lancefire. Not that the Chaos worshippers didn't break them first. 100 orc capital ships, and 100 traitor vessels, just gone. There must have been billions of orcs and 10,000 traitor space marines, with Emperor knows how many demon engines and fighters and bombers and tanks. The dreadnought grumbled in a deep voice from his coffin. I nodded in agreement. His estimations of enemy numbers and equipment were spot on. Going by any rational measure, the traitors should have won, in less than a year. Probably before any help could be sent from Ultramar. Then again, I did kinda burn down nearly any remaining demon world in the Pharos range, plus 100 orc worlds and just as many tyrannid crawling nests. Must have ruined lots of carefully laid plans and reduced the chaos influence in the segmentum by half or more. I should have captured some cultists and interrogate. Wait. There were some remaining on the Space Hulk. And a billion orcs too, plus the other assortment of creatures generally found on a Space Hulk, like mutants and genostealers and a dozen types of xenos I never seen before. These guys must have come from the Eye of Terror or somewhere. But in a few hours, it was kinda over, as the monstrous Hulk began breaking up under a barrage of torpedoes and Nova shells, and I could start stealing away battleship-sized fragments, widening gaps for more weapons to strike at fractures and split off mangled hulls and twisted weapons and engines. Even so, the Hulk began moving away while losing megatons from its mass with every salvo from our strike group. Seeing this, I directed 1,000 corvettes to dive and unload everything in the middle of the remaining Hulk. A fragment 100 kilometers long sheared off under the thousands of torpedoes striking along a midline, and less than half of this Hulk reached warp limit and jumped away. Damn cheating bastards. In time the Space Hulk will collect more victims and grow again, as in the warp dimensions were malleable, and ships could intersect each other, then remained fused once the Hulk emerged into real space. Anyway, I did manage to collect a couple of sorcerers and even a navigator. Well, it kinda made sense to use a navigator to guide this beast, and the captured ships would each have a navigator. One of them would eventually crack and do the bidding of his new masters. I began organizing an interrogation center, with security protocols in place. Pain wouldn't be really useful, but tech priests and drugs would, as well as memory reading devices and silent sisters to keep things fair. And then, the interrogations began, recorded on picked cams and sent to the command center and the Lamenter barracks. The new Lamenters should know what to expect in their career, and fucking use their melter backpack before they lay limbless and dissected on a torture table. Brother Semnai arrived escorted by a sanguinary priest and huffed at the display. This will hurt morale, and give the recruits bad dreams. I snorted and waved a hand at the big holoscreen. No Astartes has ever died of old age, brother. The lucky ones will get a bolt around in their face, or maybe a claw. As for the unlucky ones, this is very mild. The worst would happen to those Lamenters who are stupid enough for the chaos. Because then, I will be the one making them suffer. Not merely having the memories torn away by a Mechanicus brain probe. A millennium of real suffering and then true death, obliterating their souls completely. I continued in a pleasant voice, as if we were talking about wines. The sanguinary priest shuddered and walked off in a hurry, while his eyes turned black. He could run, but I knew all of them now. I had every single one memorized, just in case I needed to extract them, or hunt them down. Semnai was made of sterner stuff, or he has seen too much in the Death Watch. Inquisitors could be inventive and brutal too, I suppose. The man just sighed and sat down to watch. We'll need to salvage that Arc Mechanicus. It will make good training for the recruits. We'll incinerate and melt the rest of the metal to buy new ships and weapons, I continued while highlighting a nearly intact Mechanicus cruiser that was only lacking engines. Expected opposition, Chapter Master? Chiron perked up at the idea of killing Xenos. There are 68,000 hostiles on board. Half of them genostealers. There's even a broodlord, on deck 15. I explained in an amused voice. The dreadnought grumbled something like insanity and impossible. Then spoke more clearly. And who will go? Those 5,000 aspirants, the tech marines, and all the sanguinary priests in the first wave, under your command. Bolt pistols and melee weapons only. The blank recruits and Semnai will teleport on deck 15 to engage the broodlord and its retinue using only melee weapons, I demanded, giving the easy job to Chiron. So many people, will only need to fire 10 shots each, and not miss. Semnai grunted at his task, hand-patting the bolt pistol on his hip. We cannot take our weapons? You can take whatever weapons you want. Those who use anything else than what I ordered get disqualified. Now this will become our Lamenter's training schedule. What other chapter can train in boarding operations, with live enemies, in their home system? Just imagine how big that Space Hulk is. We can train 1 million aspirants with ease, I exclaimed in a joyous voice. As you say, Chapter Master. Here we can train in safety. But you won't always be there to watch over us. Chiron proclaimed in a wise voice, and walked away to prepare the operation. Brother Semnai had a much smaller task, and fewer troops to command. In 10 minutes my blank sons were ready, half wearing Terminator armor, the other Devastator models. Once they confirmed readiness, I just moved them on board the Ark Mechanicus cruiser on Deck 15, and then started sending over small groups of tech marines and sanguinary priests, as soon as they held a palm out for transport. Initially it went well for both groups, but as soon as I started to move aspirants over, it became hectic. Men were panicking, Genestealers were jumping about from pipes and behind corners, their claws able to slice through metal with ease. Pistols served little purpose if you were not able to see and target your enemy. I allowed most injuries, except losing limb and life, extracting the dead ones and sending them again on Deck 1. The injured men found themselves in the apothecary for emergency medical care, and then sent once more to Deck 1, to start the mission again. It was kinda fun, playing Dungeon Master. Once in a while, a group of Orcs boys would spawn at their backs, forcing the aspirants to advance more carefully. New bolter crates and bottles of water and Nutri-Gruel would await at every new deck, as a reward for reaching a new level. It was kinda fun. Sadly, the boss raid wiped, as a Broodlord was a Bio-Titan and not easily defeated by noob players. They had to start all over, passing through corridors infested with Orcs and Tyranids to reach the boss room again and again. About 6 hours later, the men seemed exhausted, and they still didn't manage to complete the mission. Don't worry guys. We will start again, tomorrow. I had enough Orcs and Tyranids in my Tesseract to train an Astartes Legion of old. And, that's what I did try to obtain.